talk of war has become louder in recent days. We have seen many scenarios across the world, where everyone predicted a war, but ended up in a peace treaty. But not in China's case, it's playing the long game. Today, I will discuss 4 flashpoints, identified by scholars, like Brendan Taylor, for a possible conflict with China, including Korea, the East China Sea, the South China Sea, and Taiwan. An exponential growth in China's military capabilities has been matched by a steep rise in the lethality, accuracy, range, and quantity of its weapon systems. On top of this, Beijing has ratcheted up its warlike rhetoric and tactics. Last month, she made a muscular speech to the Boao Forum Asia, calling for an acceptance of China, not only as an emerging superpower, but also as an equal in addressing global challenges. But, even though China's military capabilities have grown, but conventional war is not likely to be happened, and also China does not want war, at least not at this stage, because the world is blaming it over the origins of the deadly virus. It's playing the long game, and its evident intentions have become more unnerving after the recent revelation, where scientists in the Chinese military discussed weaponizing SARS coronaviruses in a document obtained by the United States government. And they discussed their ideas about using biological weapons to win a third world war. So in such situation, there will be no conventional war, but China has embarked on a strategy to weaken world's major economies. It is exporting something new to the world, a new type of war. So let's discuss the 4 flashpoints of conflict with China. Firstly, where tensions are currently high. Even though China dislikes North Korea now, China is keeping Kim Jong-un's regime in power in the north, because both have a major common interest, which is keeping US out of northern part of Korean peninsula, undermining US's influence in East Asia. In the East China Sea, just south of Korea, China has intensified its military activities around the Japanese claim in uninhabited Senkaku Islands. China appears to be wearing down Japan's resolve to resist its claims over what it calls the Diaoyu Islands. The United States has assured Japan that the islands fall under their mutual defense security guarantee. But a confrontation with China could test US backing and possibly set the stage for escalated confrontation elsewhere. Similarly, China's industrial-scale island building in the South China Sea has resulted in extensive military hardware and infrastructure. This will enable the Chinese to consolidate their position militarily and assert control over the so-called Nine-Dash Line, its vast claim over most of the sea. But the US Navy continues to conduct freedom of navigation operations in the sea to challenge China's claims. In 2016, an international tribunal rejected China's claims to the waters in a case brought by the Philippines. Despite being a signatory to the UN Convention of the Law of the Sea, China has ignored the tribunal's ruling and continued to intrude on islands claimed by both the Philippines and Indonesia. Like China's seizure of the Scarborough Shoal in 2012, that preceded its massive island construction further south. China could conceivably take the unwillingness of the US to challenge its latest moves as a cue for more assertive action over Taiwan. This is, after all, the main prize Beijing seeks to secure President Xi Jinping's legacy. So these are the areas where tensions are currently high. Secondly, why Taiwan's security matters. Taiwan presents the US and its allies with a conundrum. It is a liberal open democracy, and the world's leading computer chip maker. It also sits in the middle of what military strategists refer to as the first island chain, stretching from Japan in the north to the Philippines in the south. Its strategic significance is profound. Having adopted a One China policy since 1979, the US security guarantee for Taiwan is conditional and tenuous. Reflecting growing unease over China's actions, polls shows strong US public support for defending Taiwan. So far, ambiguity has served US interests well, providing some assurance to Taiwan, while discouraging the PRC from invading. This guarantee has been important for Japan as well. With its pacifist constitution and occasional concern over US commitment to its defense, Japan would be closely watching how the US approaches its Taiwan policy. So far, avoiding open war. Sometimes actions speak louder than words. And China's actions, so far, have avoided crossing the threshold into open warfare. But, if war did break out, China would be vulnerable. For starters, it shares land borders with 14 countries, bringing the potential for heightened challenges, if not open attack, on numerous fronts. Then, there are the economic concerns. China has significant in Japanese, US and European industrial investments, and is also overwhelmingly dependent on energy and goods passing through the Malacca Strait between Malaysia, Singapore and Indonesia, the Indo-Pacific's jugular vein. This reliance on the Malacca Strait, referred by one of the analysts, the Malacca Dilemma, helps to explain why China has invested so much capital in its Belt and Road Initiative, and studiously avoided open conflict, at least until it is more self-reliant. To avoid outright war, China evidently reckons it is better to operate a paramilitary force, with white-painted ships and armed fishing vessels in the thousands, to push its claims in the South China Sea and East China Sea, and constrict Taiwan's freedom of action. It also recently passed a new law allowing its Coast Guard to act more like a military body and enforce maritime law. Again in violation of the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. China is also expanding its gray zone warfare against Taiwan, which includes cyber attacks, repeated incursions of its airspace and territorial waters, and diplomatic isolation to undermine Taiwan's resolve and ability to resist. Would America's allies help defend Taiwan? This persistent and escalating challenge by Chinese forces has demonstrated Taiwan's inability to fully control its waters and airspace. Beijing is continuing to build a fleet of amphibious capabilities to enable an invasion of Taiwan. On the other hand, US experts are also no longer confident the Americans would win in an outright war over Taiwan, with Washington's top military officer in the region arguing what could happen within 6 years. And Taiwan lacks allies other than the United States, but Japan is mindful of the consequences of a US failure to defend Taiwan. Its ocean surveillance and coastal defense capabilities would be exposed if China took Taiwan. But Japan's constitution precludes direct involvement in defending Taiwan. Under its ANZUS obligations, the US could call on Australia for military support to defend Taiwan. The mutual assistance provisions are not automatically invoked, but the implications of Canberra standing on the sidelines would be profound. Australia should prepare for a more volatile world, rather than rely solely on the US. Australia should bolster its own defense capabilities. At the same time, it should collaborate more with regional partners across Southeast Asia and beyond, particularly Indonesia, Japan, India, and South Korea, to deter further belligerence and mitigate the risk of tensions escalating into open war. And, if warning's drumbeat of war has been heard, it will remind us that the US is no longer the world's only superpower.